Couples whose wedding was an absolute catastrophe. What happened? 2 things. 70 more guests showed up than were invited. Turns out Emil was inviting people and not telling us. We ran out of chairs, food, everything. Except wine, we had plenty of that. Someone stole the wedding gifts. My mother-in-law invited several people to our wedding, without our knowledge or permission. Luckily my father-in-law told my husband what she'd done, and my husband made her call every single person she'd invited and tell them she'd done it without us knowing and that they couldn't come. She was furious and kept going on about how it'd make her look stupid if she had to uninvite them, but my husband didn't care and still made her do it. She didn't talk to us for a couple of weeks after that. Not my wedding, but a close friend's colleague. So much went wrong, but I'll summarize. Unexpected heavy rain. Wedding ceremony shifted to inside venue. Ceiling collapsed from heavy rainfall right on top of elaborate wedding cake. Luckily the bride and groom had a very good sense of humor, and the venue refunded a fair amount of what they had paid out of goodwill. Not my wedding, but the groom kissed me on the dance floor, touched several other women without consent. The priest was a creep and grabbed my friend's butt. The groom accused the bride of cheating with the bartender, who is gay and a friend of ours for years. The groom ended up throwing his ring into the woods at the end of the night. The bride stayed in a friend's hotel while he went home and went into a rage. They are actually on their honeymoon at the moment, idiots. I'm sure that will last. You'd be surprised. My aunt told me that on her best friend's wedding night the groom went into a rage and left to stay with his brother. The last thing he said to her before punching a hole in the wall and leaving was, "I can't believe I actually tied myself down to you." 26 years later, they're happily married with 4 kids and treat that night like a hilarious footnote. The wedding was nothing as expected, but the marriage has been nothing but a blessing. It rained non-stop. The venue was outside with a gazebo-type structure. We still held it there, just closer to the middle so we wouldn't get wet. We had a low-budget wedding, so no live band, just a DJ. We gave him the music for the first husband and wife's song at rehearsal and all was good. Once it was time for the dance he played the wrong song 3 times, until my husband had it, and left me standing in the middle, while he went to put the damn music himself. We hired a professional photographer and also asked our families to take pics with the 3 cameras that we had. We have a total of 10 pictures for the whole thing. The professional photographer only had 6 good pictures, everything else was ruined for some reason. The pictures taken with our cameras were all ruined also. This was 17 years ago so I am fuzzy on the details. But all in all, we only got 4 pictures from those cameras. We were to stay at a hotel in the honeymoon suite and then the next day travel to our honeymoon destination. When we arrived to the hotel, around 1 in the morning I think, they had already given the honeymoon suite to a family because they forgot it was reserved, so we had to stay in a regular room. They forgot the honeymoon suite was reserved? What kind of idiot hotel was this? They know how to take the reservation. They just don't know how to hold the reservation. Many years ago I worked in the wedding industry for 5 years. Video. Here's a snippet of disasters. Mother of the groom got really drunk and fell onto the wedding cake, caught on camera. Best man went to the bathroom, took his wedding ring off to wash his hands, left it on the counter. Not even a minute later he went back in and it was gone. Never found it. Only family and friends at the wedding. Mother of the bride spilt liquid foundation down the front of her raw silk dress before they left the house. Had to wear a different outfit. Wedding reception set up an entire wedding for approximate 400 guests. With the totally wrong color scheme, flowers and food. There was a wedding the next day, and unbelievably the bride and groom of that wedding had exactly the same names. First and last. Bride and groom were on their honeymoon, came back and found their house had been broken into, every stick of furniture taken, every gift taken, every wall broken, sinks ripped out and glass smashed. Police found out it was the ex-BF of the bride. One bride, unfortunately, miscalculated her monthly cycle. Got out of the car at the church and This reminds me of my brother's wedding. My mom's shoe broke the morning before the wedding. I took off driving around a strange town looking for a store that was open to get replacement shoes for her. I was the hero returning with a pair right before the wedding. In the box were 2 shoes for the same foot. My poor mom wore 2 left shoes for the entire wedding. So my cousin recently got married to his long-term partner, and the actual wedding itself went really well. The reception directly after the ceremony, however, was marred somewhat by the bride's parents announcing halfway through the night, and completely out of the blue, that they would be divorcing. Wow, I'd be fucking pissed. Reminds me of people who propose at someone else's wedding. Unless you have permission by the couple, you just don't do it. In that scenario, though, they just shouldn't have said a damn word to begin with. Not my wedding, but my parents'. I wasn't around to experience it, but their friends and family still talk about it to this day. The main culprit was the heavy rain that caused minor flooding and tons of road closures. Mother was very late to the church. My father broke down, convinced that she was going to be a no-show. Not only was the taxi that was taking her to the church late due to road closures, it also managed to hit her as she was running to get in, causing a small rip and minor staining on her dress. A few members of the bridal party were so late they completely missed the ceremony. At the hotel reception, the DJ could not figure out how to get to the venue due to road closures, and being unfamiliar with the area. The first half of the reception was basically quiet until the groomsmen found that the restaurant in the hotel had a jukebox. The restaurant let them move it to the banquet hall, where they paid quarters for music. Almost half of their guests did not come, again due to the rain. The hotel was understaffed due to the road closures, so food took a very long time to come out. A guest who must have been literally dying of hunger helped herself to the wedding cake prior to it being cut. It really sucked on the day, but now they look back on it and laugh. Whenever we're at a wedding now and the bride is on the verge of tears due to things not going perfectly, my mom will always say, "Don't worry about it, I got hit by a car on my wedding day and everything still worked out." My aunt and uncle were getting married outside in fall, at a beautiful garden. All the guests arrived, but the priest did not. Finally, they got a call from the hospital saying the priest had food poisoning. So they grabbed a waiter, sent a groomsman to the Halloween store, and had a wedding where they were married by a suspiciously waitery-looking priest. I was a groomsman in a wedding for my uncle and his fiancée. I was maybe 14 and pretty nervous. I stood up straight as a board, knees locked apparently. It turns out when you stand up with your knees locked, you start a pass-out timer. My timer ran out during the vows. My recently widowed mother was losing her shit, arms flailing wildly in the air as she ran to check on me, screaming, "OH, my baby, my baby!" over and over. The wedding was paused as 10 people rushed to save me. We still watch it on VHS from time to time, pretty funny these days. My other uncle didn't put me in the wedding party a couple months later, never found out why. This happened at my wedding. My wife's father was in our wedding party, and around the time the best man was handing the rings to the officiant, father-in-law just falls over. Everyone thought he died, white as a ghost. Had to call an ambulance for him because he kept passing out when he'd wake up. Several of our wedding pics show my wife and I finishing our vows with his feet laid out in the corner. EMTs were sitting with him. He told us to finish the ceremony. He wasn't able to return to the wedding until later that night, but the DJ tossed on Eye of the Tiger for him. Not my wedding, thank God. Friend's sister got married. Big Italian wedding. No one but the bride is sure about the groom. Mom is helping the bride on with her dress and saying, "You can still back out. I promise I won't say anything about the money." 1 hour into the reception, the bride is drunk off her ass in the ladies' room, screaming, "I've made a terrible mistake." Marriage lasted, I think, for months. Then she ran off with his best friend and he, the groom, shot himself. My sisters. As we were sitting down to eat, a guest started screaming. The groom's mother went into cardiac arrest. I called 911. They came and attended to her, and as we were outside watching them load her into the ambulance, I heard more screaming. Someone ran out and told me that they had better come back into the venue. I run inside and see my grandfather laying on the floor. I ended up riding with him to the hospital. I think he just fainted from the commotion, but we didn't know that at the time. They took both of them to the same hospital. Doctor looked at both of them as they were being wheeled in and remarked, "Must have been one hell of a party." Okay, not the level of catastrophe you're probably looking for, but here goes. 1. The wedding was to be a beach wedding. We rented out the presidential suite at a hotel for the reception, and had the exact spot on the beach picked out. Every day for weeks preceding the wedding, the weather at the time of the ceremony was perfect. 70 degrees and a slight breeze. With the ceremony minutes away, the wind kicked up to high enough speeds that the sand on the beach was whipping up so violently we couldn't walk across it, let alone have the ceremony as planned. We therefore had to move the ceremony into the suite we had reserved for the reception. 2. The move of the ceremony was complicated by the fact that we were unable to check into the room until about 5:30 p.m., when the manager of the hotel, who until that day was a friend of my wife's, had promised us an early check-in so we could get set up. My mom went into managerial mode and started getting things set up, but the room was still pretty much a mess at the time of the exchanging of the vows. 3. My wife's brother is addicted to pills, and in his opiate-induced haze, lost the rings. 4. During the ceremony, officiated by my sister, her bosom popped out of the dress my wife specifically requested she not wear. 5. The place we ordered food from just gave most of our food away. My wife's mom was to be the one to go pick it up. When she got there, they apologized and offered to remake the portion of the food they sold to walk-in customers. She accepted, and 2 hours later, she arrived to the reception with food, where everyone was pretty wasted from the absurdly strong drinks my father-in-law was making. The only food they could have eaten in the meantime had been seized upon by seagulls. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.